everybody. Glad to be with you this week. It's a really busy week. I'm speaking to you on February 29th, but you'll probably see this before March 3rd. And I just want to remind you that this Saturday, March 3rd at 11 a.m., people will be gathering at Oise, that's 252 Bloor Street West, for a rally to talk about solidarity and good jobs for all. This is the International Women's Day rally. It will be followed by a march starting from 252 Bloor Street West. That's around St. George and Bloor, for those of you who aren't familiar with downtown Toronto. And the march will be heading out at around noon, 12:30. I would say be there by noon for sure. The march will wind through the streets of Toronto, and I believe they're going to stop at City Hall. I know that they'll be ending at Ryerson, where there will be another community fair, and that'll be in the afternoon. So I just want to remind you, International Women's Day March and Rally this Saturday, March 3rd, starting at 11 a.m., really close to St. George and Bloor at 252 Bloor Street West. So I hope to see you there. March 8th, of course, is International Women's Day, and there are many events happening on March 8th. You can go to the, I believe if you go to the rally and the fair, you'll find lots of information about March 8th events. The other thing I just want to remind you, and we talked about it before, is that on March 10th, there's an International Women's Day dance. It's a fundraiser for Camp Sis, which is a wonderful facility north of Toronto in the Minden area. Camp Sis has been running for many, many years. It's a space where women, particularly Indigenous women and racialized women, immigrant women, can go relax, be in the country, get away from the pressures of the city, talk, do self-healing, do workshops. So it's a great space, and they're having a fundraising dance on Saturday, March 10th. It's at the 519 Church Street Community Center, and tickets are, you can get them at the door. I believe it starts at around 9 p.m. and tickets are $20, but it's also pay what you can. So whatever amount you're able to contribute will be accepted at the door, and it should be a lot of fun that night. So I hope that you'll be able to make it out to that as well. I wanted to talk with you a little bit about today about a couple of things. The Drummund report. So you know that a couple of weeks ago, Don Drummund, who's an ex-banker, a member of the 1%, consultant, was hired by the Maguinty provincial government to go over all of the government expenditures to see, because the government is worried about a big deficit coming. Of course, we're in a recession. It's been very difficult since a big crash of 2008, which we've got to remind ourselves that big crash and that recession was not caused by the workers of this country or any other country. It was not caused by poor people or low-income people. It was not caused by women and low-income women. This crash and this recession was brought to us by financial speculators, by banks that made terrible and bad loans, by people who made bad investments with other people's money. So it's really important to remember that. Unfortunately, even though we, the 99%, to coin the Occupy movement's phrase, but while the regular person did not cause that recession or that financial crash, we certainly are the ones who are being asked to pay for it. The poorest of the poor, the most vulnerable, and particularly women, are where the governments, the provincial government, the federal government, the local governments are looking to balance their books off the backs of. And this is something that we've talked about lots over the last year, and there's been incredible organizing around it, including the Stop the Cuts in Toronto campaign and many others. So Don Drummond comes out with a report 2 weeks ago. He specifically is told by the Premier, by Dalton Maguinty, that he must not look at ways to bring in more revenue, that he must only look at how to cut and how to scale back and how to save money. And so his instructions were to do that, and he's come out with a report with hundreds of recommendations on how to do that. Some of those recommendations probably, could be acted on. They might be ways to make government services operate a little more efficiently. They might be ways to eliminate duplication and those kinds of things within government. That's quite possible. But many of these recommendations are recommendations that are going to hurt the very people who depend on our governments the most to support them during these difficult times. And so the Drummond report, if enacted the way it is, if the government decides to go ahead with the recommendations the way they are written, is going to hurt people who are already hurting very badly. And we know that the people who are most affected by government cuts, by scaling back income support programs, for example, by not implementing things like, not increasing things like the child benefit, which is one of the recommendations of the Drummond report. The people who suffer the most are women and their families, particularly their kids. Women are the people who use child care services the most. We are the ones who are in the low-paid jobs the most. We are the ones who depend on income assistance, particularly when our children are young, because we have no daycare system in this country. We are the people who are trying to help our families settle in this province and city. We are the ones who are bearing the brunt. We are the ones who use public transportation the most. We are the ones who, as I say, do the caregiving the most for elders and for children and for people in our families when they're not able to work. So when the government talks about cutting, and when Don Drummond talks about cutting services or not increasing services, not implementing an increase to the child benefit, not implementing an increase to welfare rates or ODSP rates, the people who that hurts the most are women, and it's really important for us to remember that, because you won't hear that analysis in the mainstream media. I'm part of a group, and there are many groups doing organizing around this. I want to tell you about a couple of things that are coming up. But I've been participating in a group that is a working group for economic equality. We have a website. It's www.economicinequality.ca. We've organized a series of public forums over the last few weeks, and I've talked with you about a couple of them that have happened before now. I want to let you know that we have another public forum coming up. It's on March 6th, that's Tuesday, March 6th, and it's taking place in Etobicoke. We're trying to get out of the downtown and talk with people in different parts of the city. And so on March 6th, that's 7 p.m., it goes from 7 to 9, we're going to be meeting at a building called the Assembly Hall. That's a City of Toronto building. It's at 1 Colonel Samuel Smith Drive, and that's at Kipling Avenue, just south of Lakeshore Boulevard. For those of us who drive, there's lots of parking in that area. It's also available and accessible by TTC. It's a wheelchair accessible building as well. And so I'd like to invite you on behalf of our group to come out, especially if you live in the Etobicoke area. And you know, the outside of downtown often gets ignored by the powers that be. So I'd like to invite you to join us on Tuesday, March 6th at 7 p.m. We've got a couple of great speakers. Kay Blair, who's the Executive Director of the Community Microskills Development Center. And I've worked with Kay over the years, and she's a dynamic woman and lots of great ideas. A researcher and professor named David Hulchansky, who's at the University of Toronto, recently the author of the 3 Cities Within Toronto, Income Polarization Among Toronto's Neighborhoods. So David's going to come and share his thoughts about what we can do about economic inequality. It's not enough to complain about it. It's not enough to say what shouldn't happen. It's really important for us to put forward some ideas, some constructive and positive ideas about what we can do. And to also probably to address some of the myths, like a government must balance its budget or else you know, the sky will fall. That's actually not the case. Like people are not willing to pay higher taxes. In fact, there are many people who are willing to pay higher taxes if they know that those taxes are going to be used for purposes that benefit vulnerable people and that serve to create an equity among all the people of Ontario. So the event is free. Donations are welcome. There'll be lots of time, at least half of our time, if not more, is devoted to audience discussion, so we really hope to get a good crowd out there. And again, you can go to our website, www.economicinequality.ca, to find out more info. And I just also wanted to share with you that that group, the Economic Inequality Group, or Striving for Economic Equality, has also issued a public letter to Premier Dalton Maguinty. And I won't read the whole thing, but but basically what we are saying to the Premier, and we plan to also follow up by scheduling meetings with cabinet ministers and other, we're going to be encouraging people to contact their MPP and the Premier to bring home this message. And what we want the Premier to make sure to do is to review all of the Drummund recommendations with an equality lens. We are saying to the Premier and to the cabinet ministers and to the Liberal Party, do not implement any of those recommendations that would increase people's inequality. We need to see the equality, the equity for people in Ontario increased. We need to see increases in the things like social assistance, the minimum wage, the child tax benefit, because these are things that are going to help people survive this recession, survive the high unemployment. So we want to see that no recommendations get implemented that are going to impact households in the bottom 60% of incomes. We also want to see an increase in the top tax rates for high-income individuals. And we've made some suggestions about what that could look like. We're talking about people with individual income, not family income, but individual income over $100,000, over $250,000, over $1 million. These are folks who can afford to pay more taxes, and we should be asking them to do so. We also want to see more taxes on capital. These are through capital gains, inheritance. This is unearned income. This is income that is not through work, but it's often just the luck of being born into a wealthy family. And there's no reason why people in wealthy families deserve more tax breaks than anybody else. So we want to see those. So those are things that we are going to be recommending, and we have a public letter. You can see it on the website. You can endorse that letter on our website. I also wanted to tell you just quickly in the little time I have left that there is a big march being organized by the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty. It's called Fight Poverty, Demand a Living Income, Housing, Quality Public Services for All. It's a rally and march. It's on Friday, March 16th, 2012. It's at 12 noon at College and Bay Street, right in front of the Ministry of Housing. You can find more information about this at www.ocap.ca. So stay tuned for that, more news about that. March 16th, noon, College and Bay Street. Join the rally in March, again, to demand an end to these austerity measures and to demand equality and equity for everyone in Ontario. Thanks.